Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to another Wednesday evening right here at the Sports Krib. We'll get all the little commercial stuff out of the way. As you can see by the banner across the bottom of the screen, you can subscribe and donate to our channel on YouTube. Our Cash App is $JE King 3, and all proceeds go toward our different Sports Krib contests and maintenance of the show. So, with that going forward, I see, of course, Dave is here. And how are you doing tonight, Dave?
Okay, James.
And, of course, our master of all information, Mr. Bill Carroll, is here.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Exciting time to be a sports fan.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we have a lot to talk about this evening. As everyone knows by now, Reggie is still over. I believe he might be in Paris now. I think it was Barcelona, Madrid, and then Paris. But he'll be back in a couple, and we'll talk about the trip. I know right now he's in mourning, being an Alabama fan. So, a lot of things happening this week. We are starting off, of course, with Major League Baseball and the playoffs. And although our other baseball guru is gone, we do have the number one stats and statistic man here. So we'll talk a little playoffs with Bill. Dave, I know our parents don't have anything invested in that way, but I think we have some pretty good matchups. Of course, I'm here in San Diego, so I'm good. I'm great. It's San Diego. The playoffs are here, and we're ahead. So let's talk about some of the things that's happening in the playoffs, and let's see, where am I? And we'll start with excuse me, the Tigers being somebody else is in the queue. Let's see, who is that? Who is in the queue? Is that Mr. That's Bo. Bo is here. What's up, Bo? How we doing tonight?
How's it going, gentlemen?
Hey, Bo.
Hey, good to see you, Bo.
Good to see you.
I caught a little bit of Bo's show a little earlier. Bo, your Phillies fan is kind of scary there.
Yeah. Well, I mean that is his job. He's a professional fan. He is the Philly sports guy. So that is legitimately what he does for a living.
Hey, great job if you can get it.
Not mad at it.
No, and as you said, yes, he is very good at what he does. So, yeah, I was impressed. So,
yeah, they showed him on ESPN after yesterday's loss. He looked a lot like the rest of the team, kind of dejected and sad.
Well, before we get into baseball, do we have a Sue's Corner this week, Dave?
Yes, we do. She talked to me, and I transcribed this. She's taking us to State College, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Penn State coach James Franklin is now a transportation lobbyist. He wants the runway at State College to be extended to accommodate longer-range aircraft. Franklin explained the challenges of traveling to the West Coast. A big part of us leaving on Thursday is we cannot fly out of State College. So that was a big part of our discussions with the Big Ten when all of this got started. And I think that's the expansion.
Right.
is not only are we one of the most northeastern teams or schools, but based on runway length, size of plane, weight of plane, fuel on plane, we can't get out of here unless we would stop for fuel. So instead of flying out of State College on smaller aircraft that would require a fuel stop, the Nittany Lions will be bused for an hour and a half to Harrisburg so they can board an aircraft that can reach the West Coast nonstop.
Right.
Bus trip to the airport combined with the cross-country flight will make for a longer travel day for Penn State. Franklin is right to be concerned about the logistical challenges, as Big Ten teams traveling 2 or more time zones away for games are 1-7 this season.
Right.
Penn State is further away from a metropolitan area than other Big Ten schools, which is also a recruiting problem. Franklin prefers that the runway at State College is extended at some point since it is just 10 minutes from the school. So that's Sue's corner, and that's a legit concern. Just the isolation, and before, their away games weren't, the planes could accommodate them, but to get out to the West Coast, I guess if they're flying out of State College, first of all, they're probably talking a couple planes, and number two, they have to make a fueling stop.
I don't know. I'm kind of confused here. We have planes that take off of aircraft carriers. What do you mean the runway is too short?
Well, those are fighter aircraft.
Yeah,
They're being launched.
No. Some of these little islands where you have planes flying into, big planes, and like I said, I don't know. Maybe they, need something with a little more jet thrust. But what do you think about that?
It's not just the thrust, James. It's the lift dynamics. Those planes that you're talking about are not made for short takeoff and landing, James. They're not specially designed for that. These are Airbuses or 757s or whatever. They don't have any special modifications.
And for commercial aircraft, they have rules on the amount of the fuel load based on the length of the
based on the
runway. That'll limit the amount of fuel that they can put on.
No, that's the problem. They need afterburners. Let's go.
Yeah. Get a catapult.
That's right.
That might be cheaper than lengthening it.
Right, and more exciting.
Definitely that. Those landings would be rough. When they tell you your stuff might have shifted, they ain't kidding.
Yeah. Well, they'll have to put the hooks out there. Have a hook and then have a cable across.
The tail hooks. Put out the tail hooks.
That being said, I will absolutely grab some popcorn and watch that.
Okay. All right. Well, being an Ohio State guy, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to have pity for the Lions, but as long as they can get to Columbus and we can beat their ass, I'm cool. No prejudice there involved, guys. No, just saying. But
right. No prejudice. I just hope you lose every time.
Just all I wanted to do is get to OSU. I'm fine after But let's talk about these playoffs here. Of course, we had. I think right now everybody's in Game 3. I haven't heard the latest score, but I did hear that Detroit has beat the Guardians, and they are ahead. Is it 2-1 now over the Guardians? Too bad Demetrius isn't here, but what do you think, Bill? How's this series shaking out to you?
Well, so for so long, Detroit's teams were built around players like Alan Trammell or Sweet Lou Whitaker or bombers, right? Guys who could hit the ball out of the park, and they still have some hitting. Don't get me wrong, but to me, the story of the Detroit Lions is pitching. In the postseason,
you mean Detroit Tigers?
Sorry, Sorry, that's what I meant. Sorry. The Detroit Tigers.
It was still
it's fine. I'm actually glad Demetrius isn't here now because, I'd never heard of that. But the Detroit Lions have a postseason whip of .93. To put it in perspective, the next closest team is at 1, and that's the Padres, and that's still exceptional. So that means that for every 9 innings, there's less than 1 combined walk or hit per innings pitched. So if you can't get runners on base, it sure is hard to score. And
it is.
Right. I mean, I've checked the math on this. So,
as a Mariners fan, you just watch it every year.
Right. So in the 44, now over 44 innings pitched that they have as a staff, they've only allowed 29 hits and 10 earned runs, 1 home run. So it's very hard to beat them, right? If you can't score, it's hard to win. So that's the first thing that I'd say about the Tigers is that they're very difficult to score on. They have someone who to me is a legitimate Cy Young candidate on their staff. That's not everything, but it certainly helps. They also get the classic timely hitting, as my father used to talk about. It's not just what you hit, it's when you hit it. And they've been getting those hits at the right time. I feel like they're being well managed. I feel like they're peaking at the right time. It's been a minute since they've been in the World Series, so it'd be kind of cool if that did happen. Obviously, I'd prefer that my Yankees made it, but if my Yankees didn't make it, my second choice on the American League side would be the Tigers. But they are a quote-unquote complete team, right? We talk about that. They have a decent-sized payroll, but it's not gajillions of dollars. So it's sort of I'm not going to call them, David versus Goliath, but it's more like Goliath versus Rocky, where at least it's somebody who has a legitimate chance in there. And they're well constructed. They're well managed. I will not be shocked if they make it to the World Series.
Bo. Did we lose Bo?
No, we haven't lost him, but he's waiting. The tin cans that carry sound to him.
So all things being equal, I've had the most ridiculous connection issue today. The first show this morning was literally logging me fully out of my Wi-Fi. I had to put in the password every 2 minutes.
Nice.
On a live stream, that is amazing, especially for one that I'm the one running the show. So good. I was, as you can imagine, I was, cursing out Comcast nonstop. So I did miss what the question was there.
I was asking you, what was your thoughts about the Tigers?
Oh, it's amazing. It's been so long since the Tigers have been good. It's just entertaining to watch. And, again, being a fan of a team that routinely is terrible, it's nice to see some of our terrible teams doing good. You get to see the Tigers out there. You get to see the Royals playing well. The Padres who, haven't done anything in a long time. Like all of a sudden you're just like, oh, we might get an underdog World Series. Like how weird would that be?
Yeah.
Especially when you figure the top dogs are kind of seeing their way out. The Phillies lose today. They're done. The Dodgers are trying.
We're going to talk about all those teams. Like you said, been a while since we saw the Tigers there, and anybody that beats any team in Clownland, what can I say? So Dave.
Yeah, and this was another shutout.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting. They're playing tomorrow, and the Indians, or what are they now? The Galaxy?
Guardians.
The
Guardians.
The
Guardians of the Galaxy. They're starting Tanner Bibby, who went 12-8 during the season. And then what I find interesting is that the Tigers are going with Reese Olson, who was 4-8. So I'm thinking that Detroit's going to probably have to rely on their bullpen. I don't see this Olson being in there all game.
No.
And they're probably going to be coming in with a series of relievers every couple innings. I just find that kind of interesting, the starting choice there.
Yeah. I probably no more than, what's the minimum amount that he has to pitch. And then, like you said, the bullpen, every 2 innings or whatever.
And for their starting rotation, they, like in football, you got to win this game now.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
for the starting pitchers in baseball, they're probably already looking ahead to, okay, well, when's the next pot? Like if we win this game, when's the next game coming up, and what starters are we going to have available? So that they're rested. So that's just an interesting facet to the game.
Speaking of Goliath and David, I think right now the Yankees game is tied up 2-2. The last I looked at it, so it'd be interesting to see what happens there. Of course, as everybody says, Aaron Judge is one of the worst postseason hitters. So we'll see whether or not he comes through for his team. Let's talk about the National League, though. Since you mentioned my Padres there, Bo, we'll talk about them first because the first game, it looked like it was going to be a runaway. Ohtani hit a 3-run home run, and we never recovered. So the Dodgers took game 1. And then the second game, of course, the Padres hit a franchise record 6 home runs.
6 home runs.
And they beat the Dodgers. I think 6 home runs beats just about everybody, but
No
they
doubt.
did beat the Dodgers. And then we used a 6-run second inning to take a 2-run lead in game 3. So right now we're ahead 2-1, looking to kick the Dodgers out next game. Everybody's won one game at home and 1 game away, so there's no such thing as a home field advantage. Bo, what's your thoughts here?
I mean, just for sheer entertainment value, because I don't have a horse in the race here, but it sure would be fun to watch a team that has $1 billion salary go ahead and pack it in for the year. Give me these teams that have like 20 million, 35, 40 million. Like, let's do some of that. That's awesome.
What do you think, Dave?
Well, this could be deja vu back to 2022. If the Padres can pull it off, they lost the first game and then swept the next 3. So can they do it again? It's going to be interesting, but here's the thing: Ohtani, he can take over a game. We all, he's not going to come in to pitch, but he with his bat and with his base running, he can take over a game.
Yeah, but the Padres have found a way to keep him off the base, after the first game. Bill, what's your thoughts here on my Padres?
Well, the Padres are the best hitting team in the postseason. So the Padres have a postseason OPS of 815, postseason bag average 255. The 255 doesn't throw you. The on-base percentage of 306, not the best, but their slugging of 509 is clearly better. But the next closest team in slugging percentage is the already disposed of Brewers. So the Mets, I guess, are the next closest team amongst teams that are still playing in terms of OPS. And they're well ahead of them. So they're a very good power hitting team. And, in the postseason, they have once again had the classic timely hitting, but also now the 6 home runs distorts it a bit. They're leading everybody in the postseason home runs. Shocker at 11. And they have moved runners along even without the home runs. They tend to move runners along. They don't tend to let them die on the base pass too often. So they get runners over once they get them on. That's the thing. Another important thing, a thing that really helps separate teams that survive and advance in the postseason from teams that don't. But the other thing that sort of jumps out to me, they have been judicious-ish at the plate. 28 strikeouts. While it's not an incredibly low number, it's not an incredibly high number either. To put it in perspective, the Mets have struck out 68 times in roughly the same number of innings. So it gives you that's 40 more strikeouts in roughly the same number of innings. It gives you an idea of the fact they're usually at least getting the bat to the ball, right? They're usually making contact. So if you're getting out, you're usually grounding out or flying out. And of course, you prefer that, right? The more times you put the ball in play, the more likely you're going to get a hit or maybe force an error. And then once again, back to moving runners over. It's harder to move runs over when you don't make contact at the plate. So that's, I think, has helped the Padres to be so effective in the postseason.
Speaking of the Mets, Bill, they pounded the Phillies in Game 1. Then Nick Castellanos, he decided that he'd take over Game 2, and he had a single in Game 2 to tie the series up. But now, after Game 3, the Mets took Game 3 7-2, and they're ahead 2-1. Bill, what do you think? Is it time for the Mets to send the Phillies home?
I think not.
They did.
They did.
They did today.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Well, there we go. Already done.
Yeah. Nope. It's a wrap.
Grand slam. They were down 1-0, and they hit a grand slam.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, I grew up with Mets fans, so I'm happy about that.
Go ahead, Dave. You said they were down 1-0, and somebody hit a grand.
Yeah. I think that the Phillies took an early 1-0 lead, and then it was a pretty tight game, but then the Mets were able to load up the bases and hit a home run. Let me see who it was.
Yeah, so it was they had a 1-run lead. They scored in the 4th, and then in the 6th, the Mets got the grand slam, and that was it.
Yeah, Francisco Lindor.
Oh, Lindor.
Okay, yeah. Okay, Lindor. Yeah, all right. Yeah, he's one of the Mets' big guys. So yeah, but I don't think you hear a lot about him hitting grand slams.
Not usually.
Yeah.
Well, you need the people in front of you to help out a little bit.
Yeah. So it'll be the Mets against whoever survives against the Dodgers and the Padres. But hey, that would be a big thing, knocking off two of the big guys. I mean, the Dodgers and the Mets have what is there? Dodgers, Mets, Yankees. Do they have a their own bank or something? I mean, it's
it helps if you have. I mean, all the owners are rich, but if you're looking about like super uber rich owner groups, those are amongst them. And of course, they're in extremely major metropolitan areas. They have additional revenue streams. They have their own. Each one has their own network or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I think the Yankees actually have like a printing press under the stadium where they make money.
and if you've been to any of the three stadia that we mentioned, you get pretty thoroughly milked as a fan. For those who are wondering, you may want to tap into that 401k if you're taking a family of 4 out to the ballpark to any of those three.
Yeah. I think hot dogs are $5, something like that. Well, and that would probably be cheap at the Mets or the Yankee Stadium, either one.
A $5 hot dog is cheap. Yep.
Yeah.
Here in Seattle too. Like you're buying a beer for like $12, $15. So it's one of the things I always laugh about with the Mariners is revenue wise, they do great. They just don't care about wins.
Well, hey, that's what drives it. It's the revenue stream. It's not really, it used to be how you do. Now it's, how big is your revenue stream? So,
though some might say in a capitalist society, revenue really is winning.
Well, that really just depends on if you are there for an overpriced flat warm beer or you are there to try and watch a team win. So you can be losing and winning at the same time.
Yeah, there you go. I'm expecting Mr. Scott to come through here anytime now. But we'll see. I'm pretty sure he will, considering that the Vikings are 5-0.
I was going to say, has he missed a show since the season started?
Yeah, he always claims well, Bo, I think you're on his hit list now too. I don't know what you
I hope
did,
so.
Bo, I'm going to start this next topic off with you. We're going to talk a little college football, but it seems like there's been a ruling by the NCAA that there's going to be no more national letters of intent.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, I think I just saw it. Bill, did you hear about that?
I think they're studying it. I don't think it's happened yet, right?
I think it's as of next year. There's no more. Yeah, I was looking at it was either ESPN or Yahoo Sports, where they were talking about that. Let's see, it might have been. I'm going to go to.
It would make sense in a way with the way everything's going, because even if you put down your letter of intent, the transfer portal is basically there all year at this point. At least that's the way it feels. And then let's be honest, you can be like, you know what? I'm going to go be a Gator. And then Alabama says, you know what? We're going to give you $1 million. You're like, you know what? I like Alabama.
Right.
Yeah, I think at that stage in the game, I'm not really I didn't know that they were doing it, but at the same time, it makes sense to get rid of it.
Bill, what do you think here?
So now once again, sometimes what happens is somebody makes it something new and improved, or hey, we got rid of such and such, and then they change the name of it. What's happening? And of course, for those of you who remember, the national letter of intent has been around for about 60 years. And players will still be able to quote unquote sign or commit to a school. The binding element is really what's the only part is really going to change. So the Division I Council had said going back a few months ago after their September conference that incorporating the benefits of the NLA program into institutional aid agreements is intended to add clarity and efficiency to the commitment process for all prospective student athletes, including four-year college prospective student athletes. So what is going to change? Well, amongst the things that can or will change is there'll still be some form of binding agreement, right? The dates outlined are as such. For football, early signing will still begin at the Wednesday following the last FBS regular season game at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And throughout the immediate following Friday, regular signing will begin at 7 a.m. on the first Wednesday of February. For basketball, it's 7 a.m. Wednesday of November, second Wednesday of November through the following Wednesday. Regular is the next Wednesday in April. And then 1 week after the women's and men's national championships. So what else changes? Well, not necessarily a whole lot of other things. So what it will mean is that you will still be able to sign with school of your choice, whatever school name we'll call it. And at that point, you can still indicate you're planning to attend that school for one full academic year. And it used to be that you had very little wiggle room, right? Now, when the Collegiate Commissioners Association approved the changes, they then allowed athletes to withdraw from their signed NLI for any reason without penalty. Once they decided that, even if they hadn't, quote unquote, eliminated the national letter of intent, if you can leave it, if you can essentially void it with no penalty, then you could say we're keeping it. It wouldn't mean anything. It doesn't change anything if you're allowed to avoid it. So that they simply were putting deed to words they had already said over a year ago.
Well, especially with the way the transfer portal is now, you can commit to a school and then transfer anyway.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I mean, it ultimately wasn't really binding anymore as soon as the transfer portal became what it was.
You agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, they're professional athletes.
Mm-hmm.
college football and college basketball is no longer an amateur sport. They're professional athletes, and we can expect more changes. I know it's probably been a few months now since we talked about it, but there were the schools, the teams that were trying to become bargaining units, and
Right.
so that's probably down the pike. But basically, this is the way it's moving, and so be it. And I agree. What they're doing is they're just reflecting reality. There was nothing holding those athletes to those schools anyway.
All right, Bo, you still got to leave at 7.
I do.
Okay. All right. So okay. All right. Let's move on here to our NCAA. And Bill, I'm going to start with you. Trick or Treat Saturday starts with Vanderbilt upsetting number 1 the Crimson Tide.
Yep.
Unranked
Fantastic football.
Vandy held off the Crimson Tide to a 40-35 loss.
Yep.
Bill, anomaly or questioning ahead for the Crimson Tide?
Well, I mean, the easy answer is both, but the real answer is Alabama's not as good as people think they are, and Vandy's not as bad as people thought they were. There's nothing fluky about the win. Vandy lined up and pushed them around. I watched the whole game. It was like watching the birth of a child. It was beautiful. It was it brought up emotions. It took me places. Diego Pavia, who I first remember watching at New Mexico State University of all places, ends up transferring to Vanderbilt. So this is, people complain about the transfer portal they want, but without Diego Pavia and his ludicrous toughness levels, it would have been difficult to win this game. This guy, I mean, I don't know if he's like a part-time rodeo clown or what, but Diego Pavia is a man from another era. He was just taking it to Alabama, running straight chest up into defensive ends and linebackers like it was fun. Now, I don't recommend you keep doing this, but it worked. I don't think Alabama was ready. He trucked a couple of dudes, in fact, like 240-pound guys. I'm not about like defensive backs. He was trucking big guys at times. I think Alabama took Vanderbilt too lightly. I mean, that's, I guess, not a shocking thing to say, is it? But Vanderbilt was loaded and ready for bear. They have a good offensive line. They have 2 legitimate NFL prospects on their offensive line. Maybe Alabama didn't know that. Maybe they didn't do enough scouting. But that is a legit offensive line. They still don't have a lot of, whiz-bang skill position talent. They have 1 good wide receiver. Their running backs are guys that might be invited to an NFL camp. But they have 2 legitimate NFL prospects on their offensive line. Their defense, I mean, once again, they did it with 35 points, but some of those points were sort of later in the game. Alabama, rallied and came back. I don't want to make it, but they got dominated. Like, I want to make it clear that despite the fact it's a 5-point game, Alabama got pushed around. Alabama got bullied. I watched every second of that game wrapped. There are moments where I had to remind myself to breathe. So it should be pointed out that this was not when you say anomaly, the thing that bothers me about that is it makes it like something fluky about it. There was nothing fluky about it. They didn't do, it wasn't like when in the Fiesta Bowl, when Boise State, wins on a Statue of Liberty play in the last second. No, they beat them up front. I want to make that extremely clear. So no, it's not an anomaly. Another team with an equally tough quarterback, which would be hard to find, because it's a numbers problem, right? We talk about this all the time. When the quote unquote spread, and of course we say the spread, there's like 47 different flavors of spread, but some people spread you to run, some spread to pass, some spread to pass you deep, some spread to pass short, some spread to pass intermediate, some just want to run. They run a particularly, I don't know what to call it even. There's elements of that Urban Meyer offense that they ran at Bowling Green and Utah and Florida. There's elements of what Rich Rod had at West Virginia. There's like a lot of different pastiches of different. It's a bouillabaisse offense. But at its heart, at its very root, is power runs by the quarterback, and then the plays that come off of it.
Well, hey, you were right about them pushing them around. I got to watch at least the first half, and they were really bullying them.
Yes.
Bo, what do you think? Vandy puts up 40 on that Alabama defense.
That was fantastic. It's so enjoyable watching the meltdown. I mean, even commentators were losing their minds. Like, it was fantastic, right? And you feel good for those kids at the school, right? Like, that is the biggest game they'll probably ever play in their life, playing there. And so for them to rip that goalpost down and throw it in the river, I'm not mad at that at all. They eat $100,000 fine. I think they take that with a smile.
Come on now. All those future hedge fund managers and corporate sales account leaders and venture capitalists, they can afford that. But I'm only half joking. But Vanderbilt is one of those schools they used to chant, "That's all right, that's okay. You're going to work for me one day."
I mean,
that was one of Vandy's chants back in the day.
Yeah.
And they weren't wrong.
Glad for all of them. They all deserve to never have to pay for another drink in that town again for the rest of their lives.
No question.
What do you think there, Dave? Upset of the week?
Oh, yeah, it's a huge upset, but as Bill was saying, Alabama should not have been taking Vanderbilt lightly. They took Missouri to overtime last week.
Correct.
And so Bill's point about Vanderbilt being a stronger team than people realize, I'm used to them just being patsies, just getting rolled over. And it's the exact opposite. Now, if they can get by Texas in a couple weeks, wow. But, we'll see what happens then. But it was a lot of fun watching them take the goalpost down the road through the middle of the street to the river. And how many games are they going to have like that in Vanderbilt? So kudos to them.
The singular one. and
there's
no winning Texas, because Texas is going to be ready. They're going to watch that and be like, that's not going to be us. Like, they're going to come and smack them.
Well, Bo, we continue as number 4. Tennessee falls to unranked Arkansas 19-14. The Volunteers were held scoreless in the fourth quarter as the Razorbacks kicked 3 field goals for the win. What do you think here, Bo? Were the Volunteers guilty of reading their own press clippings?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but that defense actually looked really good. Like it was, when you're watching the game, it's not like it was, they were just playing terrible. It was good defense. And so, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I love a good defensive game too. 7-0, 3-0, 6-3. I love those games. Everybody else hates them, but anyway.
Right. So not all of them are equal though, right? Because when you were watching the Jets and the Broncos, like that was not a good defensive game. That was just terrible football. Like there's a difference.
Yes, and we'll talk about that. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, no, I would say, the defense, and Tennessee's defense played well.
Yeah.
But what about their offense? Their offense needs to be able to score late in the game, and they didn't. And Arkansas, did. So there you go. But I think as good as Tennessee's a good team, but a lot of these teams that aren't ranked, they got a lot of good players. You cannot afford to let up on any given week. And I think that this is what this weekend has kind of demonstrated with all these upsets.
Dave, go ahead.
Well, so the only thing that I can say that I do like about all of these conferences essentially becoming super conferences, right? And of course, now they're talking about a 70 team, right, deal. Is you're actually going to see the end of undefeated seasons, right? Like because within the conference, you actually have good teams. It's no longer like, oh, I'm going to play in my conference. There's really 3 teams I got to worry about. And the rest of it is going to be, Tulane and Temple and, some school that you didn't even know had a football program, but they're big enough.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
but because now all of a sudden these conferences are big enough, half of your schedule are real teams. So, now your guys that are front runners for a national championship, there might be one that's undefeated, but you're going to have a lot of like 1 and 2 loss schools that are fighting for these playoff positions because there's just better competition within the conference. So, I mean, if there's anything good that gets away from the tradition of what all of this was, is competition within those conferences is better.
Yeah, well, that's what we're hoping for. Even though we do have these humongous conferences, we are hoping that the competition gets better. But staying on that number 25, Texas A&M, you were just talking about Missouri there, Dave, and the way that Vanderbilt played in the week before. Well, this week Texas A&M. They did a little more than do them. They put a little ass whooping on them here. It's like 41-10. So A&M running backs, what is that? Bill Laverne Moss, Le'Veon.
You should recognize his name, Le'Veon. I think.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell. Yeah, Le'Veon. He had 12 carries for 138 yards and 3 TDs. And his running mate, Amari Daniels, he had 9 carries, only 34 yards, but 2 TDs. So, Bill, is this either a real Texas A&M or, was Missouri playing with smoke and mirrors?
Yes. So, stop me if you've heard this before. Texas A&M is loaded.
Yes.
Loaded. Stop me if you've heard this before. It's 5 stars, 4 stars, 5, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, 5, 4. And then every once in a while, they'll throw in like a 3-star for flavor. They are loaded. The surprise should not be that Texas A&M beat somebody. The surprise should be that Texas A&M doesn't beat people to death more often. They're loaded like they were last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that. And the The shocker is that they didn't underachieve, I guess. Is that what they're surprised by? They're loaded.
Before the season, I thought they would make the playoff.
Texas A&M is loaded. They're always loaded. I don't get why they aren't better, right? I analyze teams all the time, and every year I say, well, Texas A&M will find a way to lose 4 games they shouldn't lose, and I'm almost always right. So it is one of those things I've just learned now to take what I think this team will do and add 4 losses, and I'm almost nail it every year if I do that. They are just a very strange team, but they just didn't underachieve. Missouri is nowhere near, if you just look player by player, is not as good a team, right? There's not as good a team. Go play. Luther Burden is a superstar, right? That's the one place where I can say, okay, they got him beat. At every other position, all across the field, the other 21 out of 22 players in the field, I'm giving either a push or the check mark goes to Texas A&M. So I don't know why people are so surprised, quite frankly, except I guess they assumed that Texas A&M would just lay down like they sometimes do, but they didn't. Ta-da!
I like that you described their team as if they were winning the comeback player of the year for the NFL. Like, oh, we understand that you're not actually coming back from anything. You just didn't suck. So here's an award.
Yep.
Well, what do you think there, Dave, after you had watched that Missouri Vandy game?
24-0 at half. I mean, that was, they did clobber them. But, to Bo's point about the competition, well, I think Missouri has Alabama and Oklahoma still on their schedule to prove themselves. And Texas A&M, they're going to be playing LSU in a couple weeks. and then they close out the season against Texas. So again, these are schedules where if they can get through those tough games, then it's going to be really interesting what the selection for the college football playoff is going to look like.
Yeah. Bo, I threw this one in kind of for you here. Revenge is best served cold as Washington beats number 10 in remembrance of, talking about Demetrius here, that school that shall not be named. It seems like a 13-point fourth quarter is what seals the victory for the Huskies.
Yep.
Bo, what do you think? Is it possible that this is a bubble breaker for that school that shall not be named?
No, not really. I mean, I like that, Rob. Michigan cheats. So not really. I mean, I feel like Michigan was a little bit overranked to start the season, right? I mean, they shouldn't have dropped the way the Huskies did. The Huskies dropping out of the top 25 made total sense, right? You lose your coach. A lot of guys go to the NFL, graduate. There was a bunch of transfers. They only brought back 2 guys that were scholarship the year before, right? Like, that's not a recipe for success typically. You look at Michigan, they had similar situations, right? They lose their coach. Now their heir apparent was, close by. So, I mean, that helps, I guess. But they lost a lot of players, stuff like that. So I think they were actually overranked for what they were. And so for them to lose this game wasn't really a huge shock. In fact, a lot of odds makers had the Huskies, despite the fact that they weren't a higher ranked team, as the favorite in this game. So it wasn't a big shock. The Huskies are playing good ball. Even, they went out, got a quarterback. So, I mean, do I think it's a way, like a wake up call for Michigan, if that's what you mean by that? No, I think they got beat by a better team.
Would you think, Dave?
Yeah, I just wonder if Harbaugh was still at Michigan, how would Michigan be playing this year?
I think they'd have different though.
What's that?
I think they'd have different personnel though, because
right.
And
that's the impact of a coach on these college programs and the importance of the coaching. And they don't have Harbaugh, and he's gone. They have a new coach. And now, perhaps like Bo said, they were overranked. They needed to be stepped back in the rankings somewhat. And, they're going to be playing Oregon here pretty soon. That's going to be interesting. But, for me, what I'm getting out of this is the impact of a coach on a program. And clearly, you're seeing that with this Michigan team.
Yeah. Bill,
if they lose to Oregon, they won't be ranked, I bet.
Correct.
Bill, are they a legitimate number 10?
Well, no. I mean, first of all, at this point in the season, nothing's legitimate anyway. But the game against USC showed you the cracks in the facade, right? Even though they won that game against a USC team that, to me, is still 1 year away from being what it could be. Like, check back on USC next year. If they recruit well, and when don't they recruit well, they could be trouble next year. But getting back to Michigan, explosive plays. They gave up some, and they didn't get many, but they were able to just run the ball, right? I mean, really, really run the ball against USC. But against a team with legitimate ability to defend the run, even when I watched Michigan win that game, I was thinking, like there's some problems there. If they face a team that can stop the run, I don't know if they can do enough in the passing game to prevail, because their ability to throw the ball, particularly throw the ball down the field, is limited. I think it would be fair to say. And they're going to face some teams that can stop the run. They're going to face some teams. I mean, the Big Ten, while the Big Ten has been diversified in the current version, there's still some teams that build first to stop the run. There's still teams in the Big Ten that realize there's games played at the end of this month and all throughout next month when there's going to be sleet and snow and whatever else, rain, freezing rain, the everybody freezing rain. Oh boy, yeah, what a thrill! That's when you find out how much you love the game of football. When a late November game in the freezing rain, yeah, that's when you find out. I saw this coming to some extent. I won't say I called for a flat-out upset, but I thought Michigan might be in some trouble, and I think Michigan is going to continue to be in trouble against teams that can hold up against their running attack and dare them basically to throw the football, particularly throw the ball. Like you play close to the line of scrimmage and make them try to throw the ball deep. I think that's really the recipe for success. You can stop the run, take away short passes, and say, okay, beat us deep. I don't know if Michigan can do that. And I think that they'll struggle against teams that have that kind of game plan.
What do you think, Dave?
Well, I already told you. I talked about the impact of the
coach.
Coach.
Bo, I got to keep picking on you because these are West Coast teams here, man. Number 11 USC. They were handed a loss by Minnesota, 24-17. Do you think that the Golden Gophers bit a hole in the Trojans' playoff hopes, Bo?
I mean, as weird as this year is, and not just in college, NFL's the same way. There are so many upsets. Like this has been. If you were a bookie, you're not even accepting bets anymore because you probably went bankrupt. Like this, like sportsbooks got to be hurting with the amount of underdogs that are cashing in. Honestly, I don't even know. As we're this far into the season and we have so many upsets each week, I'm just kind of along for the ride because normal analysis of these, there's no way you'd have the percentage of underdogs winning that we are.
Yeah, I mean, you got six that if you just count these questions, that's six right there in the top of the top 11. Dave.
Well, what bugs me about this game is now USC is going to be itching to rebound, and Penn State's going to have to take their desert caravan and somehow make it to California to play them next week. And but the Minnesota team, they seem to be an improving team. They played Michigan dead even, and again, maybe Michigan's overrated, but they're still a good team. I mean, it's not like they're like a doormat. And now they've upset USC. So it'll be interesting to see, how Minnesota progresses. But, for USC, and again, for me, what's another thing that's interesting is you have the new teams in the Big Ten. And, they're probably, who's going to have bragging rights? These West Coast teams or the traditional Big Ten teams. I think that's just an interesting aspect. And so if I'm USC, I can't wait for Penn State to come in to upset them. Who's going to be? I don't know if they're going to have their running back Singleton back. He didn't play last week, and so that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it is. It should be very interesting. Bill, what did you think about that USC Minnesota game?
There's been a theme throughout these upsets, right? Tennessee, USC. We talked back about Alabama Vandy, and the other one. What was the other one?
Number 4,
Mizzou.
Tennessee.
There it is, right. Yeah, Tennessee also. The most boring or most interesting part of football, depending on who you are, is run fits, right? And it's not the thing that's the sexiest or whatever, but think about how many plays happened in each of those games where somebody wasn't in their proper gap, or they were in their gap, so they got blown out of it, right? Arkansas moved some people. Now, once again, both of the defenses played very, very well. But in the key moments, when I'm running the ball, you know I'm running the ball, we know I'm running the ball, everyone knows I'm running the football, Arkansas was able to still sometimes get that crucial yard or two, and Tennessee wasn't.
We're talking about Minnesota, Bill.
I know. I'm pointing out there's a theme running through all of them.
Oh, okay.
That was the point of what I just trying to make. So if you look at the through line of all of these upsets, right? Diego Pavia against Alabama, vaunted Alabama's defense. When they third and gotta have it, he would get it. At some point, there is that part of the game where there's just pure physics and a certain amount of will when it comes down to, oh, you want to get this 2 yards. I don't want you to get this 2 yards. Let's see who decides, who's going to decide who gets this 2 yards. Each one of those teams that pulled the upset got tough yards on the interior of the other team's defense when the other team knew it was coming, right? That was true in every single one of these upsets we just talked about. It was true in this one too. That was the point I was making.
Okay. Bo, we're going to talk a little NFL, but I'm going to kind of skip ahead here to you since you have to leave us here. So let's talk about your game here. The Giants kind of beat you up there, Bo, 29-20. We all had, the good news for the Seahawks is that they're number one in their division despite the loss. So, Bo, floor is yours.
Yeah, so, sadly, there wasn't a lot to take out of that game. Like, this was one of those games where you burn the film and you keep it pushing. And why that is because they didn't perform well in any phase of the game, right? The defense was getting hammered all day, and you knew they were going to, right? They had so many injuries in the linebacking core and on the defensive line. You knew that anything up the middle was going to be there. Seam routes were going to be there. They just didn't have the personnel. And you watched very similar things the week before because they had a lot of the same injuries against the Lions. So I will say that was probably the best we've seen the Giants play all year. That was probably their most complete game. I would say the only real takeaway from the Seahawks, and they're on a short week, so they would have been throwing the film away anyway, really, but was the play by JSN to act like he was going to get that ball on a streak and dragging two defenders with him when Geno was scrambling and, ends up scrambling for 20 yards. So that was a real veteran style move from the second year kid. And so that was great. The returned touchdown off a fumble, that could have been called either direction. They didn't have a good camera angle on it. It sure looked like it was a touchdown for the Giants. So, that score actually could have been way worse than it was. But, they just couldn't get anything going on offense. DK fumbles again. Like, it was just a comedy of errors for 60 minutes. And, fortunately, they get a short week. So they just get to push it out of their mind, reload, get ready for San Fran tomorrow night.
Well, hey, Bo, final thoughts, my man.
My final thoughts based on how today has gone is Comcast, do better. That's Have a great night, gentlemen.
Take care, Bo.
All right. Have a good one. Oh, all right, guys. I'll get back to our normal football here. And we'll start, of course, with Thursday night. Thursday night, we had the banker. He was 30 of, I think that's 53 for 509 passing yards with 4 touchdowns and the Falcons' victory over Baker's Bucks. The Falcons marched downfield in overtime and kept the Bucks off the field. Dave, did anybody pick the Dirty Birds?
Yeah, I wish he was here last week. And something happened last week is I write down all of our spread picks as well as the over and unders, and I have them down on a piece of paper. So I have like pieces of paper all over my desk. And then last week I shredded a bunch of paper, including all of our picks. So I had to go back to the podcast to rewrite everything down again. But Anthony, after all of us took Tampa in the over, Anthony was the contrarian and said, no, I'm taking Atlanta. And so there you have it. Anthony has bragging rights on that game.
Okay. Did you see it coming, Bill?
Well, obviously not. Kadero Hodge, I don't think he even was on their team at the beginning of the season. I think he was added, 3 weeks ago or something, 2 weeks ago from somebody else's practice squad. The Browns, maybe? Don't quote me, but somebody else's practice squad. So the hero of the game, was a guy that didn't even start the season on their roster. So, no, I didn't see that coming. I've always known that offense had the potential to explode. And in my waiver wire article of prior to week 5, I wrote about Darnell Mooney. So I feel very smart about that. I've always liked Darnell Mooney. I liked him at Tulane. I thought he was terrific. When he got to Chicago, he didn't get the ball enough. But I mostly blame the play calling and the offense and the lack of usage. But he's a terrific ball player. And I think people are about to wake up to just how good Darnell Mooney is. So this is an offense that's long been capable of this kind of thing. I mean, just to remind people, they've got Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, and, the aforementioned Drake London, the aforementioned Darnell Mooney, and now Kadero Hodge, who comes from above nowhere. But they have a lot of skill position talent on this team. They have not always looked like it, but this potential to look like this has always been there for this team. And as Bo said before he left, they were really, 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 down several pegs on defense. Seattle was missing, I think, something like 4 starters or something on defense. And even some of the reserves were a little bit nicked up as well, but some of them just had to play because, unless you're going to, start dressing out training crew members or interns, you got to play who you have on your roster. So they definitely gave up some plays I don't think they would have given up if they had. I think every single one of the day one starters at linebacker was either too hurt to play or was playing hurt, if memory serves you correctly. And then some guys on the 2 deep who not even the guys who weren't even starters were playing hurt. So they had some problems right at the middle of that defense, as Bo pointed out. And that's where they were attacked, which is just smart football. That's what you're supposed to do. You attack a team where it's weak. You attack their seams. You attack them up the middle. You attack the underneath routes where a bunch of backups are, and they look like backups. So I should have thought about that more when I was making my pick. I checked roster trends and injury reports, but I usually wait until later in the week to do it. I should have done it probably. I don't do it on Tuesday because it changes so much, right? Because guys who are not looking like they're going to play end up playing. Guys who look like they're trending towards playing end up not playing. So I usually check, before the Thursday night games, but I should have checked earlier, I guess.
So let's go to the Sunday games here. Dave, the Broncos, rookie quarterback Bo Nix, he was 19 out of 27, 206 yards, 2 TDs. The Broncos beat up on the Raiders. How long do you think the Raiders are going to hold on instead of fold them this season? I just read where they changed quarterbacks, right? Minshew is benched now, and they're going back to Aiden.
Right, and they actually did that during the game. They I think it was after Minshew's second interception, they brought Aiden Cooper out. We'll see what happens in Las Vegas this weekend, but it sounds like they're going with Aiden Cooper as the starter. I think that they announced that today. So the Raiders are making changes. And Max Crosby, I think he's a bit dinged up, but he's still playing, and he's still a dangerous player. But hats off to the Broncos. And I know that whenever the Steelers played them, people were kind of questioning the Steelers' offensive game plan. They weren't throwing the ball in certain parts of the field. Well, that's where Pat Surtain was. And he just showed why you don't throw there. He had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. So, for a long return. So, hey, lesson learned. Offensive coordinators, if you're playing the Broncos, don't throw in the neighborhood of Pat Surtain.
If defenses haven't learned that by now, Bill, I mean, damn. But what's your thoughts on this game, Bill?
Well, the old saying is more games are lost than won, and this is another excellent example thereof. Denver didn't do anything particularly special. They have a good defense, and that part has been true since the beginning of this year. They're a smart defense, not super, super talented, but a very smart defense. They play well together. Their offense is moribund, nothing super sexy or exciting about it. They only have one sort of fantasy relevant receiver, counting tight ends, on the whole roster, and that's Cortland Sutton. Everybody else is just sort of, little Jordan Humphrey will have a big game, or somebody like that will jump up and have a big game every now and again, but you can't count on any of them. Bo Nix is a work in progress. He's a good athlete. But once again, there's so many things that he's seeing for the first time, like any other rookie quarterback. So they're going to lean heavy on the defense, going to run the ball. Nix is a good athlete. He'll run the ball. Their running backs are going to run the ball. They'll throw it when they have to. And this is an example of essentially waiting for the other team to make a back-breaking mistake, which they did, and that's why they won. But we just talked about the Raiders' quarterback situation. Their quarterback of the future is not on their roster, and I think deep down inside, I think they know that too. So I think that they will go after a veteran backup in the offseason and draft a quarterback.
Okay. What do you think here talking about the Broncos and Bo Nix, Dave?
Well, what's encouraging is he's throwing touchdown passes and he's not throwing interceptions. And so, he did what was needed in order for the team to win. And actually, I mean, they put the Raiders away, pretty decisively. But, hey, if you're not – the veteran quarterback from the Raiders was throwing interceptions. Bo Nix wasn't. So there you go.
Dave, the hapless Bungles lose to the Ratbirds 41-38 in overtime. Now, this game really, it kind of got, but it's the Bungles, so I guess I should have expected. But anyway, the Bungles waste 5 TDs thrown by Joe Burrow. And a 51-yard field goal, a 51-yard run by Derrick Henry actually sealed the fate of the Bungles with the winning field goal. The Ratbirds are now 3-2. Dave, should we be worried?
Well, this was really an offensive game. I mean, Burrow had 392 passing yards. Lamar Jackson, 348. The Bengals had basically bottled up Derrick Henry. He only had 40 yards rushing,
before
I think, or a little bit more before that big run to win the game. And here, the Bengals could have won the game. They have a good field goal kicker. and the ball was snapped, and the holder, he fumbled the ball. He mishandled the ball. So it went to the ground. He's trying to pick it up, and the kicker has to kick away before the ball is really set. And then that would have won the game. And then, the next thing you know, Derrick Henry is running down the field, and then Tucker's able to hit a chip shot. And then also Tucker hit a long one in regulation. I think it was like a 56-yarder. So, a lot of offense. Both of these teams are dangerous. The Bungles bungled it again, but Joe Burrow throwing, nearly 400 yards, shutting down Derrick Henry for large parts of the game. And the Ravens coming off of, two big wins back to back. I think both of these teams are dangerous, and they're both going to be winning more games. But it's so Cincinnati they had the game won.
Yes.
And then they do something. It kind of reminds me of a playoff game against the Steelers. They had the game won, and then they blew it. So
yeah,
Cincinnati.
We needed this Cincinnati to win though. But anyway,
yes.
Bill, what did you think?
So the biggest thing that stood out to me, besides the lack of defense from either team, was that you could see how close Cincinnati is to being a team with a much better record, right? In several of their games, they have been tantalizingly close to being, a team that could have won, and they have found ways to lose, right? They have found ways to lose games. And, they're basically probably one loss away from, for all intents and purposes, their chances to be a playoff team being, if not over, then close to being over. So they're going to play some very desperate football the rest of the season, I'm imagining. And the Ravens are a very good football team that got off to a terrible start. But they're going to end up winning, 11 probably games or something this year. And that's, they're going to grow, sort of progress towards the mean. Other teams will kind of regress towards the mean. But the Ravens are a team that if they're a solid blue chip stock in essence, right? They don't always exactly exhilarate either, but they give you solid dividends on your return. And like I said, I don't see them winning less than 11 games this year.
Okay. Bill, the Commanders beat the Clowns 34-13.
Yep.
The Commanders rookie quarterback Jalen Daniels, 14 of 25, 236 yards, one TD and one interception. Mr. Massage, he was 15 of 28, 125 yards, a TD. And is it time for us to bench Mr. Massage, Bill? And is it time to put Jaden in the offensive rookie conversation?
I'll answer the second question first. He was already there. He's been in the offensive rookie of the year conversation from jump. All rookie quarterbacks who are day one starters are at that point officially in the running, and all I do is play well, which he has. So he's been in the running from Jump Street, from week one. Moving on to the second one. Well, whether it's time or not, they're not going to, James. I could give you several million reasons why, but
218 of them, as a matter of fact.
So I don't think anything short of injury. I don't think he's really headed anywhere. Now, would I throw Jameis out there, even if it just quote unquote give the team a spark? Sure, I would. I'm a big Jameis fan anyway, but I feel like they sort of painted themselves very much into this corner, and they're going to probably ride this out until the season is essentially completely over, right? I can only see him getting benched, sort of injury, if the season was truly, truly over. They've been eliminated. There's just playing out the string. At that point, I could see them, putting Jameis out there, at least in part to keep, this person to whom they owe all this money from getting injured. If there's ever a chance, the ideal scenario for the Browns would be Jameis goes out there. It somehow snaps Watson out of his lethargy or whatever it is. Watson gets back out there, plays really, really well, and they can somehow trade him. Not this year, though. The cap hit's too big. But maybe a contender loses their quarterback next year, and Watson's playing better. But yeah, they're in a semi nightmare scenario because they're bad, but they're not so bad that they're gonna have a shot at one of the first few picks. They'll probably be more in that 6 and 11 kind of bad. And I mean that contract, man. Whew, that contract. So yeah, the Browns are in real trouble. Real trouble.
What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, on the question about Mr. Massage there, they paid him too much, and hey, they could have kept Joe Flacco last year, who bailed him out last year, and he would have been a great backup. And you still could have had developmental quarterback on the field, and they let him go. They didn't even offer him a contract. I think in part because of Deshaun Watson and the contract that they have with him. Now, to go to another quarterback, I don't think it's going to help that much because their offensive line is completely decimated. They've had injuries, I think, of 3 or 4 of their 5 starting offensive linemen. And until they're able to rebuild that line in the middle of the season, I don't think it matters what quarterback that you put out there for them. They're going to be hurting. In terms of Jaden Daniels, I agree with Bill. He was always in the offensive rookie of the year conversation, but I think that Caleb Williams was the favorite. At the beginning of the season. But right now, when you rack their stats against each other, Daniels, and I think it's a league leading. He's completing 77.1% of his passes compared to 62.9% for Williams. Successful pass plays, 50.3% for Daniels to 42.2% for Williams. Now that's going to improve over time. And then I think that on the ground, Daniels has, I think, 4 touchdowns to none for Williams. And then every time he runs the ball, he's successful. He has a successful play, meaning he either gains 4 or more yards on first down, or he gains 50% of what's needed on second or third down, or on second down, or gets a first down on third and fourth. He has successful plays 56.1% of the time when he runs. Williams only 38.1%. But it seems that Williams he's starting to improve. But right now, if I were a voter, I would be voting for Jaden Daniels because also, he has his team up with only 1 loss, and people weren't expecting that out of Washington. So I think he's definitely in the conversation right now, and if he's going to continue to be in the conversation until he starts to swim.
Staying with you, Dave. The Jaguars get off the schneid, beating the Ponies 37-34. Jags quarterback Trevor Lawrence was 28 out of 34, 371 yards, 2 TDs. Tank Bigsby, he was 13 carries for 101 yards and 2 TDs. Dave, what do you think about the ceiling for the lowly Jaguars?
Well, I mean, the ceiling's rising, but I would point out that there was no Joe Flacco magic in this game, but they did score, I think, 24 fourth quarter points. So
Right.
They really made a game out of it. I would say it's rising somewhat. The Jaguars showed that they could win a game, but again, remember the Colts they're not playing with their starting quarterback, and the Colts also were missing their starting running back. So I wouldn't say that this shows that, hey, that Jacksonville's over the hump and they're going to be storming down the league, but maybe it rises their ceiling a little bit. They showed that they could win a game.
So what? 2, 3, 4? What do you think's the most wins for the Jags? Or maybe just this one?
No, they'll win more than this. But are they going to win 5 games? I'll give them that.
You'll give them 5? Okay.
Yeah.
How many you give them, Bill?
So the over-under for me, I think they could win as many as 7. 5, definitely. 4, I feel like is their floor. So for me, 5.5 if you're doing this Vegas style. But yeah, 5 and a hook is where I have them dialed in for.
Okay. Bill, the Texans kicker, Kareem Fairbairn, he.
Oh my gosh, you made him straight up Muslim. Kaimi is how it's pronounced. Is it
Kaimi? Okay.
Kaimi is how it's pronounced.
Okay. Well, he kicked a walk-off field goal in a 23-20 win over the Bills. C.J. Stroud was 28 of 38, 331 yards, a TD, and an interception, and the Texans moved to 4-1. Give me a comparison here, Bill. Whose stock is better here? I mean, I know it's the Texans and the Bills, but are the Bills rising? Or are they going lower? Or are the Texans rising and playing where they should be at 4-1?
Well, I mean, we talked about the Bills' issues they have defensive depth issues. That was written about preseason. Everybody saw this coming. They lost, particularly in their secondary, they lost a lot of players. Then Matt Milano, right, who is really the heart and soul of that defense. So with an injury to Matt Milano, the players they lost out that secondary together, they're going to be in a lot of shootouts this year. Mark my words. If you're looking for, teams to not start your defense against, they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. And not start their defense also, but they're going to be in a lot of shootouts this year. They're going to lose some of them. They're going to win some of them. I think they are a playoff team still, but the days of them being far and away the best team. Now, what helps them is that the AFC East has largely stepped on a rake and been smacked in the face by it. So that will keep them in the running to still, no matter what happens, have a legitimate chance to win their conference. But I do not like their chances against whoever they face when they get into the playoffs. Even if it's a wild card team, I don't like their chances against the second.
Rematch with the Steelers is all right with me if we can get to the playoffs.
There you go. Right. I don't love them against the right. If the Ravens are the wild card team or the Steelers are the wild card team, if either of them ends up facing, even a quote unquote champion of the AFC East in the Bills, I like the quote unquote underdogs' chances in that situation.
Well, and it's possible that if either one of those teams could have home field advantage against the Bills instead of it being the other way around. But Dave, what do you think?
Well, Bill was talking about the defensive weapons that the Bills lost. They also lost an offensive weapon in Stephon Diggs. And I think he was happy. He had 6 receptions for 82 yards. So he helped contribute to the Texans' win. And I think that he was probably very happy to contribute to that. And the other thing is Josh Allen. He had to go to the medical tent, and for the Steeler fans, Mitch Trubisky had to go in for a snap. I think he only handed the ball off. But while Allen was in the medical tent, Mitch Trubisky actually got out onto the field. So, Buffalo, number one, they got to keep Josh Allen healthy. The difficulty there is that a lot of their success has been when he's been running, which then that opens him up. That creates a jeopardy of him taking further injury. Now for the Texans, what I got to say, they keep on winning games that are tight games, and they're finding a way to win. And walk-off field goal, okay, they won the game. And you contrast that with the team like the Bungles, who they had a chance for a walk-off field goal, and the holder can't even manage to field the snap. So I think I like the Texans' chances that they're showing some gut. I don't think that they're as strong as they were, but they're figuring out ways to win, and that's what good teams do.
Yeah. Unlike the Kansas City holder, which was able to fumble the ball and get it back up. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's stay with you here, Dave. We have the Fins. They eke out a 15-10 win over the Pats. The Fins quarterback Tyler Huntley, 18 out of 31, 196 yards, an interception. Dave, you think Jimmy Porn might be headed to Miami or maybe any other quarterback?
Well, somebody. I mean, right now it's a clown show, and I don't know what the is Tua even going to be back this season. He may not.
Haven't heard.
And
so far,
and like you look at these two teams, Jacoby Brissett and Huntley as your starting quarterbacks in an NFL game. I mean, yeah, they're NFL quarterbacks, but they're backups, and yet they're starting for these two teams. This game was kind of a clown show. There's block punt. There was snap over a center's head. There was 2 missed field goals. The Patriots did have a touchdown. They might have been able to win it, except for the replay showed that the receiver's heel came down on the line, and so the touchdown was overruled. So again, I would say both of these teams are hurting, and the Patriots, they need to find a quarterback as does Miami, because I don't think either of those quarterbacks are going to take them to the promised land.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, the Patriots are starting Drake May.
Drake Lee May is going to start probably the rest of the season unless he's somehow worse, which I don't see coming, or gets hurt. So I don't think they're going after a veteran. I think they're going to play out the string with Drake Lee May. I'm
talking about the Dolphins looking for a quarterback.
Right. And I don't think it's Garoppolo. I mean, I think that they may go after somebody, but I don't think it's going to be Garoppolo. I think I
said others,
right.
Garoppolo or others, either one.
Yeah, I think they either will go after one of the lower price street free agents, because you still have to pay them. My understanding is, and so when you bring up certain guys, like, how do you make that contract work? I know you like to turn off the salary cap when you play, James, but they can't do that in the NFL. They got to keep the salary cap on, my friend. So no, they can't just go after anybody. They have to go after people they can afford, that'll fit under the cap.
Well, that's why I was thinking of a veteran minimum. That was one of the reasons why I said Jimmy Porn.
Well, and the other thing, just to put this to bed, there's a lot of Steelers fans and some local pundits that keep on, every time that there's an opportunity, like in Miami, oh well, the Steelers should trade Russell Wilson to
Well,
Miami.
that's one of my questions for you, Dave.
All right, we'll save it for later.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So that's somebody they can afford, James. But back to the other question. Yeah, Drake May is going to carry forward for the rest of the year with the Patriots. The Patriots are not in win now mode, luckily. So I think they know that this year is really about development and finding out who they have and that kind of thing. Miami thought they had a chance to win the AFC East. Not that that's over now. I want to make it clear that it's not over already, but don't look good. Does not look good. Speaking as someone who had several Dolphins on various fantasy teams, Jalen Waddle has not done much this year. Raheem Mostert has gotten hurt. Now Devin Achane has caught the injury bug too, at least temporarily with a concussion. So Miami has also been snake bit a little bit as well. In addition to what we've talked about, they've had key injuries at a lot of different positions. This is the kind of thing where this could snowball, right? Things could sometimes start rolling downhill pretty quickly if things don't get turned around. And while I don't think it'll cost Mike McDaniels his job, he's very highly regarded. It'll definitely put him from, sort of the, pedestal. He'll come down off that pedestal a little bit, and, they'll assume that things will be better next year if this year doesn't play out like they're hoping. But he won't get many more mulligans, right? This year is a mulligan year because of injuries and all the other stuff. But you only get one of those, usually as a coach. So I hope he uses it wisely. And like I said, they might be drafting another quarterback in Miami, though. Like that is a thing that could very well be happening. It's a decent quarterback draft, not an amazing quarterback draft upcoming, but I guess we'll save that for future shows. But yeah, they're gonna have to do something.
Bill, the tallest midget, helps the Cardinals beat the 49ers 24-23. The 49ers second half woes continue as they fall to 3-2. Bill, maybe the 49ers weren't who we thought they were.
Well, who's this we? I would like to bring up that I was one of the people that tried to tell people that the 49ers were not going to just roll and roll and roll forever. They also have had some losses, some due to injury and some due to guys that left in free agency. This is not the same team. I mean, no team is the same team. Even, the teams that are doing well aren't quite the same team they were last year. But the 49ers, they'll right the ship. They'll be a playoff team. They'll be a tough out in the playoffs. But they're not last year's team and not the year before last team. So I was not one of the people that just thought they were just going to, play, rinse, repeat. Like, I didn't believe that. They've got to figure a few things out. And for a while, and Jordan Mason is a really solid running back, but the big difference is he's not a tremendous threat in the passing game. He can catch swing routes and angle routes and, shiner routes and screens and things like that. But he's just not a guy who's going to beat you down the field for a 40-yard reception and things like that, like you got from Christian McCaffrey. And so that's one thing. And then the other receivers, I mean, to his credit, Juwan Jennings has had a couple of big weeks. Brandon Ayuk is hit and miss, and, he's dealt with some injury stuff. Deebo Samuels is come and gone. So, and even Kittle has been hot and cold a little bit. I mean, he gives you great effort both in the blocking game as well as the receiver, but there have been some weeks where he hasn't done a lot as a receiver. Not always his fault, because he's not been targeted as much this year as he has in the past for reasons I'm not sure of. With all the injuries at wide receiver, I thought he'd get more targets. But this is not me, the bitter fantasy owner, talking. The fact is that they're going to be good. They're going to right the ship, all this stuff I talked about. But it's going to be a struggle for them. They're not going to be as smooth or as pretty or as powerful as they've been in the past. And I said this before the season began. So no, I'm not one of those people that just thought they were just going to roll their helmets out there and be good.
What did you think, Bill? I mean, Dave?
Well, with the 49ers, they're just not banging on all eight. And I think that's what Bill's saying is you got like Christian McCaffrey, he's on injured reserve. Deebo Samuel was just, I think, activated at the beginning of October, so he's not in the shape. Brandon Ayuk held out of training camp, so he was rusty at the beginning. So and Kittle has been a hit or miss, and as Bill said, they have not been targeting him. Well, if all of a sudden, if you get Deebo Samuel coming into shape, Ayuk had 147 yards on 8 receptions in this game. If he now rounds into form, if they can find a running back to at least carry some of the load that McCaffrey did, and Kittle, they're still a dangerous team. And they may get stronger as the season goes on, but right now, they're not a juggernaut, and the Cardinals just proved it. And Murray, he had a 50-yard run. I think he led the Cardinals in rushing, and he engineered the game-winning drive. So that they could kick I think they kicked a field goal to win it.
Yeah.
So. Again, I mean, I think that the 49ers may be stronger if these pieces that they're currently missing or are coming back into shape, if they're able to regain their form of previous years. Or it could be that, hey, the 49, because people were predicting that next year the 49ers are kind of done. The cap is going to take its toll. And Brandon Ayuk was going to be one of those leaving the team, but it could come a year earlier than people expected, and a part of that could be some of these injuries that they've sustained.
Yeah, Trent Williams is out too. Dave, the Packers keep the Rams on a losing track, beating the Rams 24-19. Jordan Love was 15 of 26, 224 yards, 2 TDs, and an interception. Packers are 3-2, Rams 1-4. You want to give me the upside on the Packers here? I mean, Mr.
Yeah. Well, the Love boat was in choppy waters there at the beginning of the game. Love threw a pick six, but then he got into smoother waters and was able to sail, and with 2 touchdown passes to Tucker Kraft. And so I think that Green Bay, as long as Jordan Love is on tune, I think that they're going to be doing pretty well. The Rams have been missing a lot of pieces. I kept on going with the Rams and just not accepting what the reality is that, they've been missing some key pieces. And without them, I don't know. I don't think Puka's back.
No, Cooper's not back, and neither is Nakua.
Yeah. So, there we go. But so the Packers won a game that they should have won.
Bill, you echo that? Packers won a game they should have won?
Almost certainly. And while we're focusing on Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, they also, you don't replace Aaron Donald. That's not a thing you can do. But, and while Kobe Turner has flashed at times, playing both interior and exterior, he's sort of like I won't say poor man's, like a lower middle class man's Chris Jones, right? And that he has enough size and enough athletic ability to play a couple of different positions to play them reasonably well. But now name another Rams defensive lineman, right? They've got to find some other people there on their defensive front. Their linebackers are not terrible, but nothing special. And their defensive secondary is, once again, someone said professional football players. They are professional football players. But I don't see somebody who's going to get a bunch of votes for Pro Bowl or All-Pro or anything else, right? So they don't have a big-time playmaker on defense. most of their name brand playmakers on offense, except Kyron Williams, have at some point been hurt this year. And John Matthew Stafford is winding down a probably Hall of Fame career. They've got some. Once again, I talked about this. The bill came due, right? On all the deals they made, and all the things they did, to get that Super Bowl. They still aren't done paying for all of that. Now they do have first round draft picks again. That makes a difference. But the talent deficit that was created when they got rid of all those early round draft picks, they're still backfilling. And so when I talk about why it is, I usually believe that your smartest and best plan is to build through the draft, it's because of where the Rams are right now, right? Because even if you paper over it with trading guys and picking up free agents, at some point that gives out and boom, here you are.
Bill, the number one pick Bears quarterback Caleb Williams has his first 300-yard game in his first year. So he was 20 for 29, 305 yards, 2 TDs. His wide receiver, DJ Moore, was he caught 5 of 8 targets for 105 yards and had 2 TDs. The 3-2 Bears are now 3-0 at home. Bill, what's up with them Bears?
They look exactly like I thought they would. They're going to flirt with the playoffs, maybe even make them. They're going to be in that 8 to 10 win range, as I predicted preseason. And it'll come down to what they do in conference, right? What they do when they do face, the Vikings and the Packers, as they must twice this year. If they continue to hold serve at home and split with those teams, they've got a very legitimate chance to make the playoffs as a wild card team. Now, obviously, Mr. Scott Worry here would scoff at the idea that the Bears could possibly beat the Vikings any place, at any circumstance, ever. But here's what I will say to that. The Vikings have played very well, and they're a good team, but they've also done a little bit of what I call running between the raindrops. So we'll see if at some point they get wet. But yes, the Bears are exactly who I thought they were.
Okay. I'm going to let you talk about the Vikings there, Dave. Ayahuasca was 29-54. Threw the ball 54 times at almost 40 years old. Is it over 40, Bill? Is he 40 yet?
Oh, he's 42, my friend.
42?
Or no, sorry. I'm exaggerating slightly, but I think he turns.
Okay. Over 40.
He's over 40.
He threw 54 times, Dave. He had 3 interceptions as the Vikings stayed undefeated. They're now 5-0, first 5-0 start since 2016. Dave, what do you think here?
Well, first of all, they were down 17-0, and so the Jets they had to do something. And you're playing a defense like the Vikings, you're not going to be able to run the ball and make up that kind of a deficit. So he had to pass. They did get back into the game. I think that the over-under for that game was 40, and that's exactly what they scored with, was 40 points, 23-17. Right. But for the Jets, I mean, he was getting hit more, and I think one of the things at one point in the game, he was reaching down to his ankle that he had injured before. And so then the question was he even going to be able to finish the game? But, he did. And he had 2 touchdowns, but those 3 interceptions sure hurt. I'm sure that he was livid at himself. The better team won. I'm just surprised. I think that the Vikings should have beat the Jets more decisively, actually. Yep. And they should not have been letting them back into the game. And I'll credit Aaron Rodgers for helping to get them back into the game.
I want to ask you guys this because, as we all know, the football world is abuzz with the firing of the Jets coach, and it was uh, the reason why the coach gave for firing Saleh was because of expectations. But as if I remember it correctly, it was the front office that brought in ayahuasca with their expectations that he was the missing piece. So, with the expectations, uh, did that force a call? Is this going to force them to call Hassan Reddick? Because they also have some holes on that defense. So, what do you think here, Dave? Are we going to get a call to Hassan? And uh, what do you think about the firing of Saleh? At ayahuasca this morning, he uh, definitively stated that it wasn't his fault that Saleh got fired. But hey, after the everything that happened in Green Bay, Dave, what do you think here?
Well, I just think that the Jets ownership, and they've shown it before, they're not very competent, and giving up on the coach this early in the season, man, unless the interim coach takes him on a winning streak, I just think it's a bad move. What Aaron Rodgers claimed is that, and I could see this, where the owner wanted to talk to him Monday night, I guess, was specifically about his injury. And I think he was asking him, are you going to be able to continue playing? He was on the Pat McAfee show earlier. And that's what Aaron Rodgers is saying. So, hey, Rodgers helped them overcome their deficit to make a game out of it. I don't think it would be the time to demote him, but I don't think it would be the time to fire the coach this early in the season. I just don't get moves like that. Now unless they have an interim coach and they have a plan that's going to be laid out, and then all of a sudden they win several games going. It's like, why don't you wait a while so that you can figure out, okay, who do we want to put in as an interim, as a successor? What's our game plan going to be for the remaining games, in order to prepare for next year? But to me, it was premature. And I think, I don't know, the owner or his personality, but it almost seems like an emotional move.
What do you think about that move, Bill?
Well, Woody Johnson is not one of the better owners, if that's what you're asking. So we can establish that. Woody Johnson is a kind of a thin-skinned individual. He has made other abrupt and ill-advised moves in the past. So owners hire and owners fire, right? General managers, coaches, etc. So I will never put it on a player. And even a player is advocating that a coach be fired, which does occasionally happen. It happened in Philadelphia with Chip Kelly, which is why he cleaned house a little bit as well when he was there. But even when that happens, they don't sign the checks. I don't care how big a star you are. It's not a player in the NFL who signs a single check for a front office person or a coach. So those are all decisions by the owner. And even if he had called Rodgers to talk about Saleh, the fact that the call is being made tells you everything you need to know. If ever a owner is calling a player for a vote of confidence or whatever it is on a coach, that means they're already probably over 50% decided they're going to fire them anyway. Otherwise, you wouldn't be calling a player. It's like if you own a company, when do you call one of the frontline employees about their manager, right? You only do that if you're probably already going to fire that person. Because once an employee has heard that the big boss his concerns about the little boss or the mid boss or whatever. That's how you break down and fracture a team, is by the owner of all people putting it in your mind that maybe this guy isn't the guy. So to me, it's all the ownership. As Dave pointed out, this is what owners do, especially the meddlesome owners, is they do stuff like this.
Yeah. Okay, we got 2 more games here. The Sunday night football game, of course, which I really don't want to talk about. But anyway, the Cowgirls quarterback earns his money with a last second winning touchdown to beat the Steelers 20-17. The Steelers D had 2 INTs, a fumble recovery, and TJ Watt got his 100th sack. But Dave, got a lot of things for you to talk about here. Short time for you to do it. The injury to Nick Herbig. Najee, 14 carries, 42 yards. Implications from the loss, including a possible quarterback change. Are we going with Wilson this week? Talk of a disgruntled George Pickens, but it seems like Tomlin brought up something that I have never heard of for a wide receiver, and that's snap management. Dave, what the hell is snap management? But go ahead.
All right. First about the game, they lost a winnable game, and literally and I was there.
Your offense has to be able to score at least 20 points. I said this at the beginning of the season.
They did score enough to win.
Yes, they do. Well,
they scored enough to win. First of all, they had 3 turnovers. 2 of the turnovers, one was at the 2-yard line. The other one was deep. The Steelers' defense was bending all game, and then they finally broke.
Right.
Joey Porter got an interception. The Pittsburgh offense scored a touchdown with under 5 minutes to play. And if you have the top paid defense in the league, you expect them to stop and to preserve that lead. The offense gave Pittsburgh the lead with less than 5 minutes to play in the game. The Cowboys drove all the way down, but still another big play. Landon Roberts, he forced a fumble. And just the way the ball bounced, Dak Prescott was in a better position to recover it. If it had bounced a little bit further out, then Miles Killebrew, who was in the game, he would have recovered that fumble, and that would have ended the game. So it was a winnable game. But number one, Pittsburgh does not have an elite defense. And Miami, I think Dak Prescott threw for 352 yards. Miami's quarterback could have thrown for 300 yards because receivers, and I was right there watching the game, they were constantly getting behind the Pittsburgh secondary. They just were beating them. And the way my article, my recap of the game, I called it Pittsburgh talks tough, Dallas played tough. Because Pittsburgh was talking about, hey, we have to have a fast start. Dallas had a fast start. Pittsburgh was talking about that hey, we play a physical game. We play it so that the other team wears out. Pittsburgh talked about that. Dallas actually did that. But to your questions, with Nate Herbig, he had a hamstring, and first of all, he's demonstrating why Highsmith is the better edge defender. Herbig is a good pass rusher. He's not so good at setting the edge, and Dallas took advantage of that throughout the game. But nevertheless, he's a good player, but he's probably going to be out for a couple weeks. He's out for this game against the Raiders. Mike Tomlin has already said that. We'll just have to see. Alex Highsmith also remains out. So what that means is that TJ Watt is going to have to be paired up with a combination of Jeremiah Moon or a couple guys off of the practice squad. Your question about Najee Harris, what teams have been doing to Najee Harris is that they're forcing, they're putting 8 into the box, and the offense is not opening holes. If you see some of the times that he's trying to run, he's running into a wall. Or when he does have some space to run, a blocker will miss a block. There was literally one play where Najee was cutting up field and it looked like he had wide open space. You had 2 blockers and 1 defender. Neither of the blockers got to the defender that tackled Najee. They got a serious blocking problem, and Max Starks kind of pointed it out. And Max Starks is usually pretty soft-spoken. I mean, and was a pretty good offensive lineman himself. He said he's sick and tired of the Steelers doing running plays out of the 2-point stance, because their offensive line coaches him to always be in a 2-point stance, whether it's a running or blocking play. The idea, or passing play. The idea being is that the other team's not going to necessarily know what you're going to do. Max Starks is saying, just get, if it's an obvious running play, get into your 3-point stance so that you have the leverage. You have, because on the running play for the blocker, it's about how low you can get so that you can get underneath the guy that you're blocking to get him out of the way. But they're starting up in the 2-point stance. So that's putting the blockers at a disadvantage. But Najee, I thought that this was going to be his breakout game because Dallas has a poor rushing defense, but they whacked Pittsburgh's offensive line and their tight ends, just whacked them. For the quarterback change, Russell Wilson practiced fully, but he's practicing with the second team. Justin Fields practiced with the first team. So that kind of indicates who's going to be starting against the Raiders. Now, does that mean that something couldn't change later in the week? Sure, it could. But as long as Russell Wilson is practicing with the second team, Justin Fields is going to be starting against the Raiders. After that, we'll have to see. George Pickens, man, he started out under his black. He had him always effing open. Mike Tomlin wasn't even aware, that until it was told to him, which he said was not acceptable. After the game, a Dallas Cowboy player was taunting Herbig, and Herbig grabbed his face mask and pulled him down. And that's, you can't, the moment that you're responding physically when people are using words against you, shows that you've let them control you. You've lost control of the situation. Words are words. The moment you take a physical action against words, well, now you've just shown that guy got under your skin and you've lost control. And that's exactly what happened with George Pickens. Mike Tomlin very professionally did not throw, and I've seen other coaches throw players under the bus. He did not throw him under the bus. The press during his conference pressed him, and very appropriately so. They pressed him on the George Pickens question. But he basically said, hey, those instances aren't acceptable, but overall he's come along, but I am not going to share what he and I talk about in private. And that's Mike Tomlin's position. The difficulty is, and I was one that didn't think that they necessarily needed another wide receiver, but the way the Pittsburgh wide receivers were dropping balls that should have been caught, they need help at wide receiver. And I don't know if George Pickens is going to have a second contract in Pittsburgh. He's definitely the most talented guy. but he is very mercurial, and he was mercurial in college. That's not something new. So in terms of the snap count, Alex Kozora wrote a very good article explaining what was happening with that and why it wasn't so surprising that he got less snaps. And it's simply because of the types of packages that they were playing with. Whenever it was 11 personnel, where you have 3 wide receivers, Pickens was always out there. In this game, they were going to more heavy packages, 12, 13, and sometimes they even go to 14 personnel. Yeah. And so in those instances, it's a little bit tighter. You're bringing in maybe wide receivers that you're looking, for blocking purposes as well. And that's not what they use them for. But that said, it's still pretty stark because both Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson had more snaps than George Pickens, and he's your biggest offensive weapon. So they probably need to figure out something with that offense because Arthur Smith, I've liked the changes in his offense, but it's not producing. It's simply not producing.
Well, I bet Reggie wants to talk to you. But anyway, Bill, our last, before we get into our predictions, Monday Night Football, the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, 29 for 38, 331 yards, 1 interception. Kareem Hunt, 27 carries, 102 yards, a TD. And Smith-Schuster, 7 catches for 130 yards. Bill, the beatable Chiefs are the only undefeated AFC team left.
Yes. I mean, am I supposed to pretend to be surprised or something?
Well, I mean, everybody was talking about how beatable the Chiefs were at the beginning of the season.
Who is this everybody? Is that the same them that tried to tell me the 49ers are going to be good?
Yeah.
We should stop listening to they and them and everybody because they're very often wrong. The Chiefs are going to win like 14 games or 13 games and not look good in most of them. Are we not used to this now? I don't know why people are still bringing this up. It's what they do. It's their thing.
Okay, well, hey.
Stumble their way to 13-4. Don't come crying to me.
You see, when they stumble their way to 13-4. Okay. All right, guys. Dave, you got your pencil and paper ready?
I do. Do you want me to go over the results from the last week?
Yeah, let's go over last week, and then we'll get our predictions in and go home.
Okay. In the picks against the spread, there was one push game. That was the
40-40.
Yeah, Indianapolis, Jacksonville. There was a +3 there, and that ended up being a push. But I had 8 of 13. James, you had 7 of 13. Bill, you won it again. You had 9 of 13 on the picks against the spread. So I'll just give the percentages. So far for the year on picks against the spread, James, you have correctly picked 51.3%. I have 53.9% correct. And Bill, you have an outstanding 62.1%.
Oh, we got to take Bill to Vegas. Shit.
Yeah, indeed. And that's where I'm flying to Friday. Now for the over and unders, we did not do as well. I had 5 of 13 correct. James, 4 of 13. And Bill, once again, you led the way with 8 of 13 correct. Very well done. So for the year, I only have 50%. James, you got killed this last week with only the 4-13. So you dropped to 37.1% on your over-under picks. And Bill, you have an outstanding 58.6% success rate when picking the over-unders. There was one push, and that was the Jets-Minnesota game. That was 40 points.
All right. Well, seems like I got to get some work done here. So, okay. Thursday night, we got the San Francisco 49ers against the Seahawks. The Seahawks are plus 3.5. They're at home, but the over-under is 49.5. I'm going to take the 49ers here, but I'm going to take the under. Bill, Dave, either one.
I'm taking San Francisco and the under.
Okay.
It's 3.5, you said?
3.5 and 49.5.
Right. I'm going to take the Seahawks and the under.
Okay. Let's start with you, Bill. The Jaguars plus 2 against the Bears. The over-under is 44.5.
I will take the under, and I think the Bears can cover. It's 2, no hook, just 2.
Yeah, just 2.
I think the Bears can cover that.
Yeah, I'll agree with you, Bill. Go ahead, Dave.
I'm going to take Chicago, but the over.
Okay. Dave, the Clowns against the Eagles. The Clowns are getting 9. The over-under is 42.5.
Okay. -9 or +9 for Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland's getting 9.
I'm going to take Cleveland in the over.
Oh, Bill.
What was the over-under?
The over-under is 42.5.
Yeah, I too will take Cleveland in the over.
Oh, okay. I'm going to take the Phillies in the under. Let's see. Where do we go from here? Bill, the Commanders are getting 6.5. They're playing the Ravens. The Ravens are at home. The over-under is 51.5.
Okay, so Washington is getting 6.5 points.
Yes, sir.
Ooh, I don't think the Ravens are going to beat them by that much. I think the Ravens win, but I don't think they cover. So, and the over-under was 40.
No, 51.5.
Oof. Okay, then I will take Washington and the under.
I'm going to take Washington and the over. Dave?
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore was just in that shootout with Cincinnati, but I'm going to take Washington in the under.
Okay. Bill, the Texans are playing the Patriots. Patriots, even though they're at home, they're getting 7. And the over-under is 38. No hook.
Got it. I will take the Texans in the over. I think the Texans will manage to cover the 7.
Okay. I'm going to take Texans in the over, too. What do you got, Dave?
I'm taking the Texans, but I'm taking the under.
Okay. Dave, the Arizona Cardinals at the Green Bay Packers. The Arizona Cardinals are +5, and the over-under is 47 and the hook.
I'm taking Arizona and the over.
Ooh, okay. Bill.
Arizona's getting how many?
Arizona's getting 5.
Oof.
Over-under is 47 and the hook.
Yeah. 5 is an awkward number. Or one less or one more, I'd know what to do. I will take Arizona and the under.
Did I pick this game?
No.
I'm going to take the Packers and the under. Let's see. Tampa Bay at the Saints. The Saints are plus 3.5. And the over-under is 41.5. I think I'm going to take the Saints in the under here. Dave?
I'm going to go with Tampa Bay in the over.
Okay. Bill?
I too will take Tampa and the over.
Okay. Bill, the Colts are playing the Titans. The Colts are plus 2.5, and the over-under is 43.
Okay, so the Colts are. Wait, the Colts are
Getting
Plus-
2.5. They're getting 2.5.
Yeah, they're
I was
plus
making sure I
2.
heard right. Okay, the Colts are getting 2.5.
Yes.
Huh. Sometimes I get a little suspicious, like, what do they know that I don't know? And they're playing in Tennessee?
Yes.
I mean, I guess that
Bizarre.
explains. I guess
It's more or less home team,
Yeah.
home field advantage, more or less.
I get it, sort of, kind of. And the 43.5 is the over-under?
No, 43, period.
43 no hook. Oh, okay. Well then I will take I'll still take the under, though it's scarier without the hook. And I will, you know what? I'm gonna take the Titans. As weird as it sounds, I think I will take the Titans.
I haven't. I've had to watch a whole lot of Will Levis on these Sundays out here on the West Coast, so I'm definitely taking the Colts in the under. Dave, I think it's on you.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Joe Flacco in the over.
Okay, Dave, the Steelers -3 at the Raiders, and the over/under is 36.5.
Yeesh.
I'm gonna take Pittsburgh in the under.
I too am going to take Pittsburgh and the under. Bill.
I will take Pittsburgh in the over.
Okay. Division game here. We have the Chargers -3 at the Broncos, and Bill, the over/under is 35.5.
Okay, well, I'll take the over, and the Broncos are getting how many points?
3. They're at home. They're getting the home field advantage.
Got it. 3. They're getting 3 points. You know what? I'll do it. I'll take the Broncos. Even with them even with the 3 points, I'll take it.
I like what Bo Nix is doing. Excuse me. I'm going to take Denver and the over.
Yeah, I think if Bo Nix doesn't turn the ball over, I think that it's a win. I keep on picking the Chargers and losing, so I'm taking Denver in the over.
Okay. We have the Lions -3 at the Cowboys, and the over/under is 52. Bill.
Oof. I'll take the Lions in the under.
I'm going to take the Lions in the over. What do you got, Dave? I went one way. Bill's with the other
I tell you, watching that game, I mean, as bad as Pittsburgh got beat up, Dallas got beat up pretty good too, and they were
Yep.
losing some offensive linemen. So I'm taking the Detroit in the under.
Okay. Bill, the Falcons at the Panthers. Panthers are +6. Over under is 47.
I will take the Falcons and the under.
Dave.
Same thing. I mean, Carolina and Dalton, he's not doing it. So I'm going to take Atlanta in the under.
I'll follow that car. Dave, the Bungles at the Giants. The Giants are +3.5 at home, and the over-under is 48. Not a lot of hooks this week.
Huh.
Well, I know Cincinnati can score after that Baltimore game, and the Giants were scoring some points. So I'm going to take. I just think that Joe Burrow is a better quarterback, so I'm going to take Cincinnati in the over.
Bill.
I'm going to take the Giants and what was the over under?
48.
Ooh, that's probably right at. That's probably correct. That's probably we might be doing a push right here. I'll take the Giants and the. I'll just pick one, Bill. I'll take the Giants and the under.
Okay, I'm going to take the Bungles, and they scored 38 against the Ravens. I think I'm going to take the Bungles and the under. What do you got, Dave?
I already said Cincinnati in the over,
okay.
And it was Cincinnati's -3.5, right?
Yeah, Cincinnati's -3.5. The Giants are +3.5 at home, of course. Okay, Bill, Monday night game. Give us your predictions and your final thoughts. Buffalo Bills against the Jets. The Jets are +2.5 at home, and the over-under, Bill, is a remarkably low 41.
Yeah, I'll take Buffalo in the over, and 41. And final thoughts, right?
Yeah.
So on this day in 1989, one Arthur Shell took the field running out of the tunnel clad in silver and black. And of course, most importantly, clad in black. And in that moment, in that self-same instance, when the Los Angeles Raiders beat the Jets 14-7 on Monday Night Football, it established a new watermark for the accomplishment of black men and black people in the National Football League. And while it is easy to point fingers or make fun or whatever you want to say about Al Davis, about lots of things he did or did not do, there's a person that brought the first woman into the front office when he hired Amy Trask. He brought the first black coach at the head coach position, and of course the first Hispanic coach as the head coach when he hired Tom Flores. So while Al Davis was a human and flawed like all of us, and of course the term maverick, I think if I had a dime for every time I heard someone called a maverick or someone who marched to a beat of a different drummer, I would be able to at least make a fairly large fort out of dimes. I can say that he was truly a person who brought around him his people, and his people didn't have to be a certain race or a certain gender. They just had to be people that felt like Raiders. And if you felt like a Raider to Al Davis, he would do whatever he could for you, especially if you gave back that same energy and loyalty to him. So on this day, an astonishing 35 years ago, wowzers. Okay. Just hit me that was that many years ago. Like I said, this piece of history was made in the National Football League.
Dave, predictions and final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm going to take. This will be an interesting game. This should prove whether Buffalo is on top of a weak AFC North division. But I'm going to take Buffalo in the over. For my final thoughts, one thing I did want to mention, and I wish that Anthony was here, but last year I felt that the AFC North was the strongest division in football, the most competitive, and I thought going into this season it was going to be another dogfight. But I've got to say, I think now I would look to the NFC North as being a very competitive division, top to bottom. We were just talking about the Bears maybe making the playoffs. And you got Green Bay with Love and of course Detroit and Minnesota. But I gotta give my hats off to the NFC North because I think that they've taken the crown as the most competitive division to the whole. But for my final thoughts, I attended the Steelers game Sunday night. I drove up Sunday with a buddy of mine. There was a very long weather delay. The lightning was crazy. The rain was coming down like cats and dogs. But I was able to be in the clubhouse overlooking the tunnel, which is a little bit sheltered. But it was kind of cool to see Snoop Dogg down there, high-fiving Steeler players and stuff like that. He was completely into it and stayed throughout that thing. What a lot of people don't realize, Elon Musk was at the game, waving a terrible towel, and got to see him. And now he's talking about maybe investing in Pittsburgh. I've already sent messages. How about buying the Pirates for one? That would be a good investment in Pittsburgh.
Now Elon Musk loves a terrible business deal, but I don't know if it'll go that far.
But it was a really, really long delay. But I got to say, after it, everybody, the stands were packed. There was a lot of Cowboy fans there. Usually at Steeler games, there's not a lot of visiting fans. You can usually count them in the hundreds. And the Cowboys fans were there in the thousands easily. You didn't really hear them until the second half because I think that they were waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then when they realized, and it ended up being a very exciting game going down to the last 20 seconds, it was a great game. But, usually when you're departing a game after a tough loss, I've been in other stadiums where when the visiting team wins, there's a lot of gloating and yelling. There's fist fights. There's beer cans being thrown around. And I didn't see any of that. I mean, it was very peaceful. People were talking. There was some congratulations going to the Cowboys fans. There was some woofing, but not very much, and nothing that was approached, where it seemed like it was going to be a fight breaking out. Now, I'm sure with 65,000 people, maybe somewhere something like that happened, but usually the Pittsburgh police at Steelers games are very quick to respond, and they quell those very quickly. But I want to say it was such a peaceful ambiance, even though the Steelers lost, that I was very proud to be from Pittsburgh originally. It made me feel proud of the city because, and I'm sure that we've all seen videos from other stadiums where, some ugliness breaks out, between fans. And usually it's Steelers fans, it's between Steelers fans because they're not used to having a lot of visiting fans come to the games. But anyway, that's my final words. It's always nice to I would have preferred to win, of course, but I really appreciate the ambiance after the game. That was a nice feeling.
Dave, there was something that I'm not quite sure of, and I might be wrong, but it also seems to me that the Steelers have a losing record when Snoop Dogg attends games. But you can check that out.
It could be, but I tell you what, he came out to do the terrible towel twirl.
Oh yeah,
and actually that was done before the delay. They did the coin toss before the delay. and they took it right up to that point, and the crowd was pumped when he came out.
Hey,
They
it's
were
nothing better
pumped.
than seeing Snoop Dogg with. He has usually he has the throwback jersey on underneath the jacket.
Yeah.
So I mean, I mean, he is a true Steeler fan.
Oh yeah, and he stayed through that whole delay. Hour and a half. I saw him, and he, a lot of people would have just left, and
they showed him.
He was there.
They showed him on TV. Talking to the announcers, and they showed his interaction, like you say, waving the towel at the whole 9 yards.
And I think with Snoop Dogg, just real quick. I mean, he's somebody that's number one. He's had his league, but he's embraced all sports, and like when he was at the Olympics. I think that he's done a lot of good things along those ways, and so I'm very happy that he's a Steelers fan, and I'll have to find out what his record is whenever he attends a game. I really don't know.
Yeah, I think it was. I'm not sure, but I think it's 2-3. But I might be wrong.
All right. Well, I'm heading to Las Vegas Friday, so I'm hoping that Pittsburgh can turn it around there.
Oh, okay. You're going. Oh, Dave, you will be amazed. Have you been to the stadium before?
No. I was there when it was being built, but I've never been inside the stadium. Now, I'm not 100% sure I'm going to the game yet. I'm waiting to hear from a friend. I'm going to be in Las Vegas, and my one friend, he'll let me know because he has the tickets. So
yeah, you take the monorail right over to the station. It's a good experience. I've never been to a game, but usually I go down there to go to the fight. But the monorail takes you right over to the stadium, and like you, I was there before it was built and kind of watched it being built. I'd like to be able to get to a game down there. Maybe next year or so, you give me a little notice, Dave. Maybe we'll get down there at the same time.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right, guys.
Hey, by the way, did you give your last pick?
Oh, did I give my pick? I thought I did, but I'm taking Buffalo and the over.
All right. And I'll make sure not to shred the paper this time.
Hey, like you said, a good thing you can go back and listen to the broadcast and get all your picks or anything else you wanted. So we're all good. So, hey, guys, thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to everybody again next week.
All right. Yep. Take care.
All right, guys, have a good one. To all of our audience and everybody listening, I hope we can get Demetrius and the guys back soon. I know it'll be, I think, another 2 weeks before we get Reggie back, but we'll know. It might be 3 with the loss of Alabama. I'm not sure. I haven't heard from him. Has anybody heard from Reggie since the Alabama loss? But anyway, usually there's something on the thread, but I haven't seen that either. So let's hope Reggie didn't do his Sanford and Sons imitation on us. Oh, Elizabeth. But all right, guys, have a good week. I'll talk to everybody next week. Have a good one.
Take care. Ciao.